Guys, thanks for joining us today. Okay, today we are so excited to bring you a really special Father's Day themed class where we are going to be working with polymer clay and making lots of different fun keychains. So these keychains, they are styled for dads, but with all of the techniques that we're going to show you today, you can style them for any holiday, any special occasion, or just sort of an everyday look. So I'm Stephanie Menor. I'm going to be your teacher today. So let's switch to the other camera and take a look at what we're going to be making together. So we have three different keychains. These three are unique because they showcase specific techniques with polymer clay, and we're going to walk you through all of them. So the first keychain is this one. This is the first one we're going to be doing. So I'm going to show these to you what I consider sort of in the level of difficulty. So this one has a custom phrase on it that says #1 dad, a little tassel, and you can see that it is very shiny. We're going to show you how to add that shine to your clay. The next one is this checkerboard, I guess, necktie that is so cute. We're going to show you how to make this super easily with pre-designed clay. And then finally, the last one is a sculpted little game controller with some dangles here that say Best Dad. This one is partially sculpted by hand, so I saved that one for last to show you how to do that technique. Okay, so let's clean these up here. And we're going to get started with the very first project, this keychain. So for this keychain, you are going to want some clay. Obviously, I will be working with these clay slabs. So the clay comes a little differently than maybe what you're used to. It comes in this flat way. This is a pre-rolled sheet of clay. Here's what they look like when they are pre-designed. So this is that checkerboard design we're going to use on that tie. And so the design is already in the clay. You don't have to do all the hard work to get the checkerboard pattern. So we'll show you how to work with those too. So besides clay, you are going to need some clay cutters that look something like this. They are sold in packages where you get a bunch of different ones. Everything that we're working with today is sold in the jewelry making department at Michael's. Then we have an assortment of clay tools. This basic tool set here is everything that you need to start working with polymer clay today. We have a blade in here in this case that I'll show you close up. We have a sharp metal point here, and then we have some double-sided. Here's the other side. So each of these 4 tools are double-sided, and then we have an acrylic roller. So this is your basic tool set for working with clay. Here's a look at that blade a little closer. It is very sharp, so I keep mine in the case. And I have added a little bit of clay here to the side just because I am sometimes afraid that I'm going to pick it up by the sharp end. So I keep that clay there for me so that I know which end is the one where my fingers go. Okay, and then finally we have some jewelry tools, some jewelry findings, some keychains, some head pins, some beads, some jump rings. We'll go through each of those. Some other tools here. We have a little drill that we're going to use. And the surface that we're going to work on is this ceramic tile. I bought a bunch of these at the hardware store. They are like 40 cents or something. These are amazing to work with polymer clay. And I like having this small size because since I primarily make polymer clay jewelry and small accessories, this is how big I need to work on. So this works perfectly for me. And it doubles as a baking sheet. So this whole tile is going to go into the oven. You don't have to transfer what you're working on to a baking sheet, but you can. If you do need to transfer it to a baking sheet, we suggest to use parchment paper to line it when you put that in the oven. So polymer clay is an oven baked clay. So this will go into the oven for 20 minutes at 250 degrees. And until then, it is soft. But after you bake it, here's an example of some baked clay. It's very flexible. The clay will not come out of the oven brittle. If it does come out brittle, usually means that it wasn't baked long enough, so it didn't fully get to do its thing in the oven. So 250 degrees, 20 minutes. If it's extremely thick, you may want to put it in for another 5 minutes. You're not going to burn it at 250 degrees. So that is sort of your basics of the stuff that we're going to use today. I have a few other things up my sleeve that we will look at as we get started. But let me take this clay. I've already opened this up and kind of cut a little corner of clay off, but basically this is how it comes out of the package, just like this. See how thin it is. This is about 5 millimeters thick. And I'm going to put it this way. And I like to roll it directly on my ceramic tile. That helps it stick down to the tile. I can also put a little cornstarch on it. This just makes sure that it won't stick to my roller. This is optional. And then I can roll. So this type of clay, normally with a solid color clay, you do want to condition it first, but we are going to do this first project straight out of the package without any extra conditioning. And conditioning clay is when you take clay and you roll it in your fingers and you smush it around and you warm it up in your fingers until it becomes more pliable. But here we're just going to go in with our first project. Okay, so I've rolled this out slightly. I'm going to bring in a tool here, another tool. These are thickness guides. And it's very hard to see this white one on camera, but it says 3 millimeters somewhere. You can kind of see it right there. And you can lay these on either side of your slab. There's another one here. This one's a little bit wider. This is 4.5 millimeter. And this helps you get that slab to an even and consistent thickness. Okay, so this will help to avoid bumps and lopsided clay. Okay, so we are ready to cut this. Now I keep my cutters in a little bowl of cornstarch. And so normally if I were to cut this with cutters, I'd probably want to dip it in cornstarch and then cut it. But with this particular piece, we're going to do one extra step because I want to achieve some nice rounded corners on my cut. And to do that, I just take a piece of saran wrap here. Okay, lay that down. And so in this case, you don't actually need the cornstarch because we have that layer of saran wrap. But I'm going to cut 2 shapes, 2 circles. And you kind of have to really get in there when you're using the saran wrap because you have to reach all the way down. All right, there's one. And you can see even from here, this achieves this soft edge. If I were to cut this, which I'm actually going to do without the saran wrap, you will see that you get straight edges. So it's up to what your final design is going to be and kind of the effect that you want to achieve, whether you put the saran wrap or not. So I'm just going to lift that off. And now I'm going to weed out the clay that I don't need. And I can get one of my tools out to kind of help me with this. Let's get this guy out. And because we are working with a dark color of clay, you will find that it can stain your tools. Especially if you have white or light colored tools, it may stain your tools a little bit. You can give them a scrub right after you're done. Okay, so here's what it looks like. Now I want to clean up these edges. I find that when I use saran wrap, I don't get as clean of a cut because that cutter is not quite touching down, reaching all the way down um, onto this tile. So there's a little extra cleanup. You can just go around with a tool. And the thing is, you don't have to do this at all. I could just put this in the oven as is and clean it after I've baked it. But sometimes it's easier to clean it before you do. All right, so we're just cleaning up all these edges. Same here. All right, now this is ready to go in the oven. As I said before, I can put this clay towel into the oven 20 minutes at 250 degrees and bake it. And we're going to come back to this tile later for for one of the future projects. So I've actually already baked this one. This is exactly how it came out of the oven with the little dangly bits and everything on there. So I wanted to show you what it looks like. And this one I did with the saran wrap. So you can see in the profile, you can see that nice soft edge there. So to clean this up, first of all, if you have cornstarch on it, you may want to give it a little bath in some warm soapy water. Then if you have little rough edges, you can take a nail file and just kind of knock off any bits that need to be perfected. Like that. Okay. And, really take your time getting any imperfections nice and smooth. Okay, so there we are. Here is the base of our keychain. And you can see how matte the clay bakes. And this is the final keychain. You can see how shiny that is. We are going to achieve that shine using UV resin, which is a product like this. This is like a clear glue that dries in UV light. And so I'll demonstrate how it's used. And we also want to get some words on the front of that. And those words are as simple as using stickers. So these stickers are from Michaels in the sticker aisle under the Recollections brand. And they contrast beautifully with the dark of the keychain. And so we're going to put a little message on here. All right, here's what we're trying to achieve. And I'm just trying to see if I can find what side I want to be the top and the bottom. Okay. Now the first letter that I'm going to put down is the A. This will help me to center my word dad and kind of establish where that line is going to go. It's a lot harder to work your spacing if you started with the D in dad. It's much easier to start in the center. So here I want to take my time and get this A exactly centered and even. And that's not it. Let's try that again. Okay, looking pretty good. All right, let's put the D on here. This would be a great time to use some tweezers, which I know that I have. Let's see. Here we go. Just to grab onto the sticker so you can see it better when your fingers aren't in the way. And just trying to line that up nicely. I'm gently pressing that down for now, just in case I need to lift it up later. I don't want to press it down and burnish it on there if it's not in its final placement. Just getting that other letter. And I'm going to place that one as well. And of course, any kind of sticker is going to work here. This happens to be a glitter sticker. Different types of PVC stickers will work wonderfully. Metal stickers, any type of transparent sticker. Really, the sky's the limit. Okay, now we're going to get our number one. We have a number one here. These are a little hard to get off of the backing. Oop. And I'm going to line the number one up right here with the D and the last D in Dad. That just helps me get the spacing right. And now to create a hashtag, because this sticker sheet comes with a lot of things. It has uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols, but it does not have a hashtag. So we are kind of making that on our own out of the letter I. And I'm using this one as a guide and just wanting to line that up with the number one that I've already laid down. All right, now we need our two horizontal pieces. And one more. Now, if you had a Cricut, or if you had a sticker that was only one sticker that happened to say number one dad, or whatever phrase you want to put on there, then this process is going to be a lot easier for you just to lay one thing down. All right, so there is our design. Now, the glitter that is on these stickers, it will get on your fingers. It will get kind of everywhere. And when you put the UV resin on, that glitter is going to spread, which you can see here. But I think it looks cool. It kind of adds to the sparkliness. And now we're ready to check out this product, UV resin. So to use this, you need a bottle of UV resin and you need a light source of UV light. And that is this lamp here. So this plugs into a USB source and I can turn it on and off, and that is our light source. I'm also going to need a wood stick. And when working with UV resin, I always have a paper towel off to the side. You do want to work in a well-ventilated area, and you do not want to be in direct sunlight because UV rays come from the sun. And so if you try to do this in direct sunlight, it's going to start curing immediately and kind of gooping up on you, and you don't want that to happen. All right, let's open this up. And this goes directly on top. It can go straight out of the bottle, directly on top of our piece. It is self-leveling, but I'm going to have to do some work with the wood stick here just to get it to go to all of the edges. And this process that I'm doing is the same whether you are making a keychain or whether you are adding a shiny finish to any of your other polymer clay creations. It could be earrings, charms, other kinds of jewelry, anything with polymer clay that you want to have a nice shiny finish, UV resin works beautifully for. Now this blue surface that I'm working on is a silicone mat, and UV resin does not stick to silicone, which is a really handy feature because I'm going to cure it right down here. Just bringing out another tool so I can hold this down. And I can see that I overspilled here on that side. I'm not super concerned about that. It will just scooch it over a little so it's not sitting in a puddle. Maybe use a little of that up here. Okay, looking pretty good. I'm gonna wipe all of my tools off with this paper towel, and then I bring in the light. And cure times with UV resin depend on what you're curing. In this case, this is just a top coat, so I probably only need to cure this for maybe 2 minutes or so. I'm just gonna scooch this back under there. And we do classes. If you're interested in UV resin, we do classes. We make beautiful, beautiful jewelry with this product every month. So take a look at michaels.com in the classes tab, and you will see some UV resin classes coming up. We have a class coming in just a few days on graduation projects that you can make with UV resin. So keychains, shaker charms, a pin, and some jewelry. So check that out. So this little lamp here is a 9-watt UV lamp, and it runs on a timer. So it just turned off. It runs for 1 minute and then automatically turns off. So in this case, I'm going to run it for another minute. I am just going to scoot it around. I just want to make sure it's hitting all sides of that. We can still see my spill here, but now my spill, you can see, is not liquid anymore. It is turned solid. And I can just kind of clean that up, and I'll show you how. UV resin, this brand UV Resin Craft, is available also in the jewelry making department at Michaels. There's a whole section of it where you're going to find the resin and molds and bezels and all sorts of fun stuff to work with this product. All right, so that's going. The next step I'm going to do is I need a drill hole in the top because I need to hang that onto a keychain. So to do that, I use a little hand drill. If you had an electric drill, that'll work just as well. Let me just check this out. So I have this glob on here, which I am going to, it's not, let me cure the back of that. That didn't get quite cured. I'm going to chop that off with this jewelry tool here. Just a little nipper. And I can also shine the back too. I can also add UV resin to the back if you want to do that. Be my guest. So this is what we have. And I'm going to snip this part off. All right. So it's not perfect, you know, where that was. It's, you know, you can do another small coat of UV resin there. You can go in with a little paintbrush even, but I want to get to the rest of these polymer clay projects. So we are just going to add the drill hole up here. So figure out where you want it to hang. I think I want that right there. And then apply some pressure and start twisting. You can see how easily that came through the back. And now we have some findings. So you are going to want a large jump ring that's going to connect. Actually, you need a couple jump rings. So here's where we want to use our regular flat nose jewelry tools to open up that jump ring like this, like a coil, and feed that through. And I'm going to attach one more jump ring before I close this. Okay, and then to that jump ring, you can add a small length of chain. So you can add a chain and then to your key ring. But in this case, I'm just going to go directly to the key ring. one more jump ring. And close it up. And here's what you have. All right, so that was a very, very quick intro to UV resin. So like I said, if you like that, I know I saw it come up in the chat. There was a link to the upcoming UV resin class where we're doing some graduation projects. Okay, so we are moving on to our necktie keychain right here, and that uses this type of polymer clay, which is a pre-designed clay slab. I'm going to take it out of the package. And this is what it looks like. And the colors go all the way through. It's not just a surface print that's been put onto clay. Find the edge here and open this up. I'm going to bring in a new ceramic tile. I have several of these. And just put that straight down on there. And also bring in those thickness guides. And we're going to start gently. Just start working this. I do want to bring it down. This starts at about 5 millimeters deep. These spacers are 3 millimeters, so I'm bringing it down in depth just a little bit. And as you roll, you will see that that pattern will shift and morph a little bit. And that's okay. This is an artistic creation. So this checkerboard is not going to be at perfect right angles. It's going to have some waviness to it. I think that just adds to the charm. All right, so that's at about 3 millimeters thick. Let's take those away. And now to get this tie shape, we are just going to sort of free form cut with our blade. So this is the blade that comes in the basic toolkit. It is very flexible. It is very sharp. Be careful with this. And now we need to decide, do we want the tie to be facing this way or this way so that we get more of a diamond print? I like the diamond thing, so I think I'm going to do mine this way. And here you are doing just a little bit of sort of, free form cutting, but it's all straight edges, so it's not that difficult to do. So here I'm just going to press down. Let's cut this whole chunk off. And to lift this up, don't want to disturb that pattern. So I'm scooching this under there and lifting this up so that I can save this for something in the future. And as I said earlier, I keep this little piece of clay at the top of my blade just for safety. Sometimes I get too excited about these classes that I'm teaching, and I need to force myself to pay attention because I'm using sharp tools. Keeps wanting to come off. All right, this piece that I'm not using, I'm going to slide this under here and try to gently pick that up. And save that for later. All right, let's make the tip over here of the tie just a little sharper, this angle. Okay, and I'm using this as a guide. I'm gonna go about that tall. Now our ties actually has two layers to it. I actually like this angle a little better. So let me cut these in just a little bit so we get that tie shape at the top. And again, just making straight line cuts. And all these little pieces of clay that I'm taking off, they are not going to go to waste. I'll show you how you reuse those. Like these little scraps. And in all your cuts, you want to make sure that you're cutting straight down at a 90-degree angle to your surface. Okay, I'm going to bring in one of the scraps here because I'm going to cut the top part. See, the top part has two layers. You can see them if I turn it like that. So I need sort of like a polygon shape. Let's see how I'm going to do that. And again, weed this out. And now I'm just going to perfect the shape. And there you go. So I'm just kind of gently press that down, and you can kind of perfect the shape with your hands. But I'm pressing it down so that it can become one. All right, and because I'm doing this on a ceramic tile, this whole thing can just go into the oven. When it comes out, I do my final finishing. Very simply, one jump ring, length of chain to another jump ring to the key ring up at the top. All right, so that's how that one is made. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask them in the chat. I wanted to show you this one so that you could see how to work with the pattern slabs. But I also want to make sure we have enough time for our last project, which is this gamer controller. And it has some little dangles on it. This one is so fun to make. I've made several of these because I wanted to find what was the exact right technique to make this easy for you guys. Because a project like this can be sculpted completely by hand. So let's go back to this tile. This is the tile that I cut the #1 Dad keychain out of. And I'm actually going to get rid of this top one. Moving that off to the side. And we are just going to work with the bottom one. So I tried making this so many different ways. These are all my little testers that I did. And I wanted to make this so many times because I was testing out how close you need to be with the little buttons and so forth to make it look like a controller. And the good news is, as long as you have some colorful buttons on there and a general controller shape, it's going to look like a gaming controller. So, but the easiest way I found to do this is a technique from Rosa Vergara, who is in the chat with us. And it starts with a round circle. So this is that round circle that I cut earlier using this cutter. This is going to give you the round shape of the sides of the controller. The next thing you do is you can cut the top straight like this. We're just going to chop that right off and get rid of it. And then next, to get this sort of notch, you can use other cutters that you have. In this case, it's a triangle cutter. I'm gonna cut into this, trying to keep it even. And now we just kind of fix it up. So with your tools, a tool like this is good for it with a nice flat edge. Oops. I'm going to move the camera just a little bit here. Okay. So we can perfect the edges. We need to make, and sometimes working just with your fingers is easier. Need to make softer edges down here. Kind of around these corners. You can go in and perfect the sides here. And round the top. Round these top corners. For sort of perfecting it, you can use just a little bit of water. This is just water. And you can use that to kind of burnish edges. This can help you get rid of any unwanted texture. It's not going to get rid of, if you accidentally stuck a fingernail in there. But for some really light marks or fingerprints, using water to burnish on top of your clay can help smooth it out. And I like to do that around the edges, especially. These controllers have very soft, comfortable edges. And so you want to try to achieve that here. And you're just going to keep working this. Into the shape that you want. Try to scooch this over just a little bit with my hands. Maybe get a tool in there. I love these tools because they're double-sided. So you get 7 tools. Really, it's like you're getting much more. Okay, so we could go on and try to get this shape perfect. When I made them earlier, I was trying to get more of a shape like this, but found that this was very difficult to achieve. Starting with a circle is much easier with cutting that wedge in the middle. All right, so time to decorate. We're going to do a couple different techniques here. I tried a lot of different kinds. I'll put them out here so you guys can see. A lot of different ways of doing the buttons and attaching the buttons. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways and kind of what I learned and how to make the buttons easier. So first of all, there's the, oh gosh, I don't know what you call this button, but it's like the directional one, top, bottom, left, right. And first I tried to make a cross. This is difficult to achieve unless you are a sculptor. So I'm going to show you my little cheat way of getting that effect without it being too literal. So I'm just taking some gray clay. This is leftover clay from another project. And what you see me doing here, this is conditioning clay. This is just working it with your fingers, warming it up, and it becomes soft and supple. And you know you have nice conditioned clay when you can pull it and it stretches. It doesn't break. All right, so I'm going to break off a little piece of this, about this much, which I'm going to roll into a ball. This is, oh gosh, how can I tell you how much this is? This is like a pea sized, like a large pea. somewhere between pea and edamame size. Let's say that. And so I'm just working it into a sphere. Okay, once I have a sphere, I'm going to place that where I want my directional key to go. There's probably a specific name for that key. Let's call it the directional key. I want it to go right there. And then I need something flat. I'm going to use my thickness guides here. And I'm just going to press this down, straight down. Okay, so that's the start of our directional key. At this point, I could go over with just a little bit of water, smooth that out a little. But we're not looking for perfection here. We're not going to be able to achieve perfection. It takes years to get to the level of sculpting skills needed to make a perfectly 3D, perfectly miniaturized gaming controller. That's not what we're going for. We're going for something that is unique and handmade with your own little hands, and it does not have to be in the expectation is that it is not perfect. All right, so now to get the directional part of it, using a tool, something like this with a flat edge, I can just etch into it at perfect north-south first, and pressing down, and then perfect east-west. And I'm really pressing. This does a couple things. It presses this gray button down into that black clay, and it creates this sort of directional look. Okay. All right, so that side is done. Now we're going to add this other side. I've played around with a few ways to do those buttons. Here we just did 3 little globs and stuck them on. Here I did a bottom sort of a base to those 3 blobs. And then here I did blobs on blobs. I hope you can understand what that means. But I honestly think that any of these 3 ways are perfect. Here's another way. This one just has some more muted colors. I love the muted colors in this one too. But we do that with more clay. So here I just have tiny little bits of brightly colored clay. And I am going to start with yellow. This has already been conditioned, but let me just give it a little squeeze. And I want to make equal sized blobs. So first I'm going to cut it into a snake. Not cut it, I'm going to roll it into a snake. I'm going to do that with all of these. And all I'm looking at is the dimensions, the width of the snake, not the length. We have a question in the chat from Debbie. Thanks, Debbie. Great question. What is the recommended oven for baking clay? So I bake my clay in my regular kitchen oven. A toaster oven also works wonderfully if you have a craft room and you want to have an oven specific to your polymer clay crafts. Toaster oven works wonderfully. I know that's what our jewelry designer Rosa Vergara uses. You just don't want to use a microwave oven, but any conventional oven will work. Conventional or toaster. All right, so I'm making these little bits here, and then I'm going to use a tool to cut off the same amount of each one. And it's easier to judge this when you're cutting from these little snakes than just pulling off a bit of clay that you think is the right amount of clay. This helps you kind of measure it. Even though we're not measuring, it helps you eyeball it a little bit better. Okay, and now we turn these into balls. So just rolling gently with my fingertip on a solid, smooth surface. And keep in mind, you know, this project uses a lot of colors. Your colors will transfer to one another, especially dark colors. The red will transfer, black transfers to your work surface, to your tools. So just keep in mind the order that you are working with these. I started with the yellow because that yellow picks up every little speck of color that you have. And at this point, I can already see that this red is too big. So I'm going to lop off a little bit of it and re-roll that. Okay. So here, I think of these. Oh, why not? I think of these options, I'm going to go with this one. So this one actually has a double blob. The color blob is on top of a black blob. So let's make those black blobs. Here I have just some black clay, rolling it into a snake. Let me move these up. And I want to cut this into 4 balls that are exactly the same size as each other, but bigger than these ones. Now, if you are a perfectionist, you can weigh these pieces of clay to get the exact right amount. Anyone who knows me knows that I I can't do that. I have to just go for it and eyeball it and kind of see what I get. You can see this one's a little smaller, so I'm going to add more clay to him. Okay, looking good. And here I'm comparing them with each other. This one's a little bigger. So let's shave off a bit. Reroll that. Every time I shave off a bit, I'm bringing it off to the side and putting it back with my bigger blob of black. Okay, those look about right. So now I'm just perfecting them. All right, here is where it helps to use a sharp tool like this. We're going to pick each one up and place it where I want it to go. Oop. And I'm not pressing this down really, I'm just placing it. I'm going to scoot it over just a little bit. I'm also not worried if I am piercing it with this tool because all of that will be covered. All right, getting that in approximately right position. And now I'm going to take a flat object and press those down. Oh, and that one's stuck with me. Let's see if we can't fix this. Nope, I'm going to use this tool. Okay. Then I can go in with my finger and just kind of perfect it. Okay. Now these I'm not going to pierce them with the tool. I'm going to use my fingers, placing one on top of each. So the buttons below it just kind of give these a platform to sit on, makes them look slightly more realistic. And once you have those in place and all even, you're going to press down. Yay, it worked. Let's see if I can't bring you in a little bit here. Nope. There we go. There you can see better. And sure, this has some extra bits around here. I'm not super worried about that. I'm going to fix that up when this comes out of the oven. Now, just some really small, few more small details. I'm going to take some gray clay here, another little snake, and make some even smaller buttons. We don't know what these buttons do. They are just fake buttons in a fake controller world. But if you are a gamer or you know that the person receiving this gift is an ultimate gamer, feel free to do completely realistic placement and colors of buttons. All right, so this one I'm going to pick up. Oh, nope. I'm going to put a button there. And some red transferred to that. Could you see that? Some red clay transferred to this. So let's just try to hide that red underneath. And this one. And I'm going to press that down into the clay using a toothpick would work. This is a larger wooden stick. I'm pressing that down like that. And that gives it a little decoration, but also presses it down into the. Okay. Also, you can add additional designs here in these buttons just by pressing down with a flat edge of something. You can add crosshairs to it. Let's do that. Okay. And that is ready to bake. So this goes into the oven, 250 degrees, 20 minutes. I actually would bake this for maybe 25 minutes because it is quite thick at this point. So for thicker items, we do suggest about 25 minutes just to make sure that it gets cooked all the way through. All right. So let's pretend that this is the thing. We'll use this one since this looks more like ours. This was one of my testers, so it is not perfect. You can see the edges here are quite wobbly. So you would want to go in with a emery board, which I can't find my little emery board, so I'm going to have to use my big one to fix those edges, kind of file away any unwanted bits and just perfect it. And now we need a way to connect this to our keychain. And so I'm going to be creating a hole going this way. And that hole can accept something that looks like this, which is like the screw eye. All right. So the hole can go in like this. Place it where you want, start twisting. And I only need to go down about 4 millimeters. And I want to place this with a little dot of glue. The glue that I recommend is Loctite super glue. And we'll see if we can get out just a tiny little bit of this. All you need is one little drop. And here's the screw eye. I'm going to dip it in the glue. Make sure that's really covered. And it just goes directly in that hole we created. And probably easier to use pliers for that. There we go. Let that dry completely. And as that's drying, we are going to prep the rest of it. So we have this part, we have some jump rings, but I want to show you how to make the best dad dangles. So you are going to need some letter beads. And these little things here, this finding, let me show you this one, which is called a head pin. So you see it's got a head on it, and it's just like a thick pin. And we slide the beads on there. We start with a black bead. This is just a black faceted glass bead. And the word best. But since this is the bottom, I need to actually start with the T of best. And then the S. Wait. Am I not thinking of this right? Hold on. Let me look at my example. Yeah, I'm right. But I need to turn this way. B-E-S-T. And one more black bead at the top. There's our little stack of beads. And now we do some wizardry at the top here. So we need to take our jewelry pliers and turn this head pin at a 90-degree angle, butting right up against the top bead so that it looks like this. Then we cut off the excess. And you want to leave about 3/8 of an inch, about that much. And hold on to the end so it doesn't fly across the room. That goes in the trash. And here's what you're left with. Now you take this tool. This is a round nose plier, one of the basic jewelry tools you're going to need. And you start at the end, positioning your pliers like this, and then twist your wrist back. And we're holding on to that end and twisting it. So when I remove my pliers, you can see that it's like a candy cane shape. And then I put my pliers back in and twist again. And now it is a loop. And that's how you create a loop at the top of anything, any type of dangle. Okay, one more time. We're going to create the dad. Again, we start with a black bead, D. Just make sure you're putting the letters on in the right direction. There we go, one more black bead. That hole is so hard to see. There we go. Okay, so one more time. We're going to take the top 90-degree angle, butted right up against that top bead. Chop the excess. We're going for 3/8 of an inch, which is right about there. Round nose pliers, positioned right at the end. Twist it back on itself and let go. You have a candy cane. Reposition your pliers, do the same thing. Twist it back on itself, let go, and now you have a loop, which you can kind of fix up. It might not be exactly perfect. You might need to kind of twist it back on itself just a little. And now we have charms that say best dad. Okay, let's cut our chain. You only need about an inch or so of chain. For this particular chain, that means I'm going to do about 5 links. Now, Michaels does sell the type of keychains that already have that little bit of chain. I just didn't have any, so we're doing it the old-fashioned way. Trying to cut this. And it doesn't want to cut for me. There we go. All right, now I'm not 100% certain that that is dry, but it feels pretty dry. It feels like it's solid in there. So let's give it a shot. So from that, the loop of our controller, we're going to use a jump ring, finding the break in the jump ring and opening it to go through here. And a little piece of chain goes on there. The last link goes on there. Close up the jump ring. And then we're going to need a jump ring to attach. Attach the last link, which got a little bit skewed here. Let me fix that up. Okay. To attach to the keychain. All right, so there's the main part of the keychain. And now we need to attach our best dad. Each one is going to get a jump ring. And you could attach all of those to a link here, but what I'm going to do is attach them to the keychain itself. Here, open and close the jump ring. And one more. Open it. Thread it on. And close it up. And there you go. So I hope that you have found some inspiration here in these projects to work with polymer clay, to make keychains, to work with UV resin. And I hope that we will see you back next time. Like I said, always check michaels.com. In the classes page, we do polymer clay classes and UV resin classes. Thank you so much for joining us and staying to the end. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.